Tackle today, the Justice Brothers from Tackle Trading, bringing you all the charts, the news, the analysis at the start of a very busy week, so you can be informed in your trading decisions in just a few minutes. This is going to be a busy week. Markets a little bit of risk on after Israel attacks Iran, but not a lot to show for it, easing some of those geopolitical tensions. Matt, pretty healthy on a lot of charts out there right now as we start the week.
Yeah, it's a very healthy chart technical environment, I should say, as we are starting to navigate a really heavy week, both from an economic perspective as well as an earnings perspective. But you're absolutely right, Mark. A good start to a choppy week, I would describe, given the fact that there's so much news out there in the marketplace. But you're right when you're talking about crude oil selling off fairly aggressively here today, showing you exactly kind of what the market thinks of the Israeli strike against Iran. Obviously, not targeting nuclear facilities, not targeting oil facilities, really handling it from a military perspective, and that was the concern for the market over the course of the last 3 weeks, as we've been kind of waiting on what would that Israeli response be. We did see it over the weekend. You're seeing the price response in the market today.
Yeah, Matt, it was in the back of traders' minds for the last 3 weeks, right? Like
Of
you might
course,
not have been, yeah. So
of course it was. You knew Israel was going to respond to the and retaliate, rightly so, against the 191 ballistic missiles that were launched just a few weeks ago. There's kind of been this waiting on pins and needles with exactly how aggressive, or if the response would be seen as a reduction. And so it was a little bit of a reduction based on what we were anticipating in the conversation. So you're seeing just a little bit of the market improve here a little bit this week as crude oil is getting sold off fairly aggressively. But again, I wouldn't read too much into that from an S&P 500 perspective. We're obviously seeing price movements outside of it, but in the market itself, we're just seeing the same consolidation in general. We haven't seen a breakout. I expect that to occur this week.
yeah,
One
no, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that healthy, and we're going to break down all the charts. I would just like to look at ARC real quick, Matt, just how it's symbolic of what I think is just really healthy price action. It's just not large caps, small caps, those high growth areas. I mean, it's pretty broad based this morning.
Yeah, it is. It's green across the board here. Q's is up and kind of testing that overhead resistance zone. Once again, that resistance at 500, very, very, very important. IWM has a little bit of a confirmation candle off a bullish retracement in front of a potential multiple time frame breakout. The diamonds here showing a little bit of reprieve after it's a pretty nasty weekend. What I would describe industrials, healthcare, finance, which are all Dow components. You've had a little bit of a deeper pullback, nothing too aggressive from an overall market perspective, but anytime you do give up the momentum of the moving averages, such as the 9 and the 20, you're going to ask for a little bit of consolidation. And so this candle is a good step in the right direction for that consolidation. When you're looking at specifically the ARC and other very sensitive type areas of the market, especially in that rate conversation, what are we seeing a little bit today? You're seeing a breakout on ARC. You're seeing a little bit of outperformance on IWM as well.
Yeah, no economic news today of note, but that's going to be the last day we say that, as the economic calendar is extremely busy. This is an extremely busy earnings week, and there are economic reports that are significant, and multiple of them each and every day the rest of the week.
Yeah, a lot of economic reports out there. Definitely check out the Trade Justice podcast that was released yesterday morning on YouTube. Also available on any podcasting app. It's uploaded on our Tackle Trading Twitter account as well. If you want to understand kind of how we see the most important reports coming out in the market this week, Coach Mark did a great job of ranking the top 10 events as we're navigating a very important week. So definitely check that out. But as of today, there's not really an update here today.
Yeah, and on the earnings front, what, Matt, 40% of the S&P 500, including 5 Mag 7 stocks report this week. This is a heck of a week. What do you got for us this morning?
Yeah, 5 of those Mag 7, but you're talking about 40% of the entire market, but you're talking about a tremendous amount of the growth of the market this week. And that's the thing about these stocks this week. It's not just the amount of stocks, the absolute just litany of stocks reporting earnings this week. It's the biggest companies in the world reporting earnings this week. It's the catalyst stocks reporting earnings this week. And so it's going to be a very, very important earnings week. And I kind of feel like the market's going to take its tone over the next couple months, mostly from this week and not necessarily next week, but we'll talk about that later on. When it comes to the stocks in the news here today specifically, we got ON Semiconductor, we got Taiwan Semiconductor, and Robinhood in the news here today. ON Semiconductor is in the news because they reported Q3 earnings. They came out with a slight beat against expectation, 2% beat against the expectation. Revenue was down close to 20% year over year. That was a little bit of a concern. When you're looking at guidance, they basically reaffirmed forward-looking guidance. Now, on Taiwan Semiconductor, a very interesting a news story coming out here today, as one of their chips was found in a Huawei AI processor out of China. Now, Huawei is obviously on the restrictive list out of China with obviously Taiwan Semiconductor AI chips. And so that they self-reported. This was not reported from the government. This wasn't reported from Huawei. This wasn't reported, obviously, from Huawei. This wasn't reported from the US. This was self-reported out of Taiwan Semiconductor. And obviously, we're seeing a little bit of a gap down situation because this is very serious stuff when it comes to AI. There is a tremendous amount of protection around our AI development. We do not, I say we as the royal we, as the US, we do not want our chips and chips that we have control over in specifically from an AI perspective in the hands of China, quite frankly. And so this is a little bit of concern on Taiwan Semiconductor. Now, how that chip found into Huawei, it did not come from Taiwan Semiconductor. It came from a Chinese manufacturing company that we don't know exactly how they sent it to Huawei, but it did end up in a Huawei AI processor, and that's the concern out of Taiwan Semiconductor here today. And then on Robinhood, just a growing trend of technology and the ability to gamble on U.S. elections. There has been interesting court cases over the last couple months regarding the ability to gamble on U.S. elections specifically. Robinhood comes out today and they announced that you can now trade contracts based on the U.S. presidential election, focusing primarily on obviously Harris or Donald Trump and which one's going to win the election. And so Robinhood getting into the presidential election gambling market, that does make some sense to me because Robinhood is one of those brokers that primarily is a gambler's type of a broker. When you're looking at these from a technical perspective, let's take a look at ON first and foremost. They gap down on the actual report.
I love these range engulfing candles.
We've seen a couple of them recently, right? Where you gap down, you fire right back up on when the cash open comes out, and it shows you a lot of momentum, but it also is very difficult to catch. The problem with the ON is you got a lot of volatility here, and you got a lot of overhead above the price action as well. So keep an eye on the overhead resistance list. Resistance, I would like to give you an extremely accurate one. The problem is you got any resistance anywhere from 76, 77, 78, 80, a lot of resistance in this overhead. When you look at it on a weekly chart, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It really doesn't get cleaned up until you start working up into that 80 level, although you do have an interesting trend line on that weekly chart. In general, a pretty big choppy environment for ON Semi here today. When you're looking at Taiwan Semiconductor, the problem with Taiwan Semiconductor is they had a really good pattern here coming into the week.
Yeah, they did.
Bullish retracement. It was a secondary pattern off a very good earnings report. And the news today just kind of, I don't want to say it blows up the pattern, but it does put you in a little bit of consolidation type feel. When you do gap down, you give up that 9 EMA on the negative news, you could certainly see that consolidating a little bit instead of just confirming that bullish retracement. So it did blow up a pretty decent developing pattern out of Taiwan Semiconductor. Probably need to reassess that situation with a little bit of consolidation. And then when you're looking at Robinhood here today, trying to break out of a very good high base Robinhood is, problem with Robinhood and the breakout here today, it's not that it's not clean. This is one of the cleaner breakouts we've seen in Robinhood. The problem is it does have one of those companies that is reporting earnings this week is Robinhood, as they do report later on this week.
Yeah, pretty boring outside of the crude oil big gap down on the Israeli Iranian news. Pretty boring day in commodities and the dollar high base setup. Hey, Matt, nobody's going to complain if this tops out here or takes an extended break, are they?
No, nobody will complain. And when I mean nobody, I mean anybody that trades in the market, anybody that trades in the commodities, anybody that invests in commodities, anybody that invests in the market is not going to complain if we see the dollar top out here. Now, what we are seeing is exactly what you labeled. We're seeing a high base. We're seeing a high base, which is typically a bullish momentum-based pattern that typically is consolidation at the top end of a trend, waiting on that 9 EMA to catch up before you start to trigger the momentum again. High bases are definitely have a probable edge to continue the current momentum of the trend. However, how many high bases have you seen this year turn into a little bit of a rounding retracement, Mark?
Yeah, it's been common actually.
It's been a little bit more common this year than what we have seen in previous editions. And so yeah, I do think you're starting to see a little bit of volatility at the top end of this trend. And what I mean by that is look at the last four trading sessions as we're kind of coming into that 104.5 level. Big up, big down, big up, big down. You're starting to see a battle there, right? You're starting to see a little bit of increasing volatility. I take this as a positive on the commodity side of the equation. I take this as a positive on the S&P 500 side of the equation, given the fact that we are starting to see resistance play a little bit of a role. And quite frankly, the market and the commodities have held up pretty decently in the face of what has been going on with the United States dollar. Gold looking just absolutely beautiful in a high base type situation of its own. Kissed off the 9 both yesterday and the day before. That looks like it's prime for a breakout, especially if you see a breakdown on the dollar itself.
And once again, Matt, a new story, de-escalation, geopolitical de-escalation, and gold doesn't budge. I mean, how many times have we seen some version of that story this year?
Very surprising it doesn't budge. An alleviation event we're obviously seeing, right? We're obviously seeing an alleviation event in crude oil tied to the Middle East, and you're seeing gold kind of up on that day. Forming that little bit of a high base. Again, how many times have we said we've been extremely impressive with gold? On the silver side of the equation, developing a nice little clean flag-based pattern here, like the tops of the candles over the last couple days, forming that intraday resistance level. When you're looking at copper here, Mark, we talked about this in the podcast. Give us another week of consolidation. That would look extremely beautiful. When you're looking at crude oil, we saw the gap down situation violating support. We're still seeing a massive volatility here in crude oil that was starting to slow down. Now that we saw the de-escalation, obviously this candle is to be understood with that type of de-escalation. What should transpire as well, Mark, is a little bit of slowing momentum at support, crude oil behaving at support levels a little bit more consistent, and we're close to some really important support levels when it comes to that crude oil chart. You're seeing this overhead on the you see this on the weekly chart. There is a tremendous amount of support, anywhere from 64 all the way to 66 here on that crude oil chart. So, keep an eye on crude oil over the next, maybe not this week, should be volatile, but any developing reversal formation that is traditional here after we saw the de-escalation of the event could be extremely compelling. Obviously, that's a down the road type conversation. And Bitcoin here today is forming a little bit of consolidation in front of that 70,000 potential breakout. So keep an eye on Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy day in the Traders Lounge today at Tackle Trading. Going to go over sectors, going to go over tradable ideas. Come join the fun. Come join the information. TackleTrading.com. Sign up for that 15-day free trial.